Hi, I'm Phil Moulton. Welcome to Snowmobile Television. On today's episode, we're going to be putting some new parts on a not-so-old sled, and then we're going way back in time to the vintage era. We're going to check out some vintage sleds. I'll take you to a snowmobile museum in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. And later in the show, Kimpex will show you how to get brand new parts for your old vintage sled. Let's ride.
STV is sponsored by Yamaha, revs your heart. Kimpex, fueled by fun. And by Skidoo, never stop pushing.
Snowmobiles have gone through so many technological changes over the years, from how they're cooled to how they're lubricated, suspensions. Everything has changed so much over the years. I'm going to show you a few things in this building that have changed snowmobiling over the years. This is my second trip to the Polaris barn. Last season when we covered it, it blew my mind over the amount of vintage and history that has been collected. I had to come back again and take a deeper look and try to find some more hidden gems in this barn. Yes, this barn has a phenomenal history of Polaris snowmobiles and enough parts that will make any restorer's jaw drop. But no, even after all the requests from everyone, I still can't give away its location. Let's first take a look on how sledding began. In the earliest days, snowmobiles were incredibly simplistic. Cooling the cylinders was a simple matter of moving air over the cylinder heads. Sometimes it was a matter of just putting the cylinder heads themselves exposed through the hood or incorporating a fan to blow air over the cylinder throughout the entire day. If you were moving with a free air, you were fine. The fan cool would work better if you were stop and go. Either way, it was a simple matter of air moving over the cylinder heads to keep the engine cool. In the mid-70s, the strive for more power meant a move to liquid cooling. To keep the power up, the engine had to stay cool, and the only way to do that was with liquid cooling. In 1976 to 1978, Polaris had to make the move from the TX to the TXL. The L stood for liquid cooling. During the 1970s, the technical development was happening at an exponential rate. The engines were now liquid cooled, they'd switched to Mikuni carbs. The problem was keeping that sled on the snow. So, leaf springs were on the way out, independent front suspension was on the way in. From its infancy, snowmobiling was done in a free-ride manner. There were no trails for these sleds, their owners rode them wherever there was snow. Local fields and forests were all places to ride in the 60s and 70s, but in the 80s, organized trail networks started to emerge. The trails allowed greater ranges to travel, but they created a new challenge. The roughness of those trails made traditional leaf spring suspensions a real challenge to ride, so the OEMs began to offer independent front suspensions on consumer sleds. My first snowmobile with IFS is sitting in the very back, the 340 Cross Country Indy. We're in Peterborough, the home of OMC, so you know we're going to run into some snow cruiser owners. OMC Peterborough. This is the home. Tell us about the home of OMC.
We're right in the heart of it. The first factory is where the canoe museum is right now. I only just 2 blocks away from where that factory was. And just across the street is where the Cortha Cup was, where you did your little interview many years back in the snow, when the stands were still there. And in 1968, OMC unveiled a snowmobile factory, strictly for building Johnsons, Evinrudes, as well as the snow cruisers. And it's not more than 2 kilometers southeast of us right here, where we are right now in the Memorial Building. I could be wrong on this a little bit, but I believe that they started here in Peterborough maybe in the 1920s, or slightly earlier than that perhaps. They were into stern engines, the Johnson stern engine drives. Evinrude motors came in here too. And then we had the Lawn Boy mowers and so on. Pioneer chainsaws, they did it all. And in the wintertime, we got snowmobiles for you too. And Snow Cruiser was the Canadian exclusive model. They were only sold in Canada between 1965 through 71. And, but they still made Evinrude and Johnson's here in Peterborough and shipped them to the States. And the 1972 model season through 76. The Johnsons and the Evinrudes were now sold in Canada, and the Snow Cruisers faded away. Well, you know, Kohler engines that were on more of the sportier models. Kohler was just down in Toronto, so they weren't very far away from us. I think they were in Malton, actually. So, yeah, we're right in the heart of it here, Phil.
Everybody has a Snow Cruiser story.
Snow crushers, yeah. They all have a snow crusher, and I don't know if you've seen it or not, but there's a little rough-looking 36 over here. In 1971, my father and a group of 4 other riders were the first ones to ride from Owen Sound to Tobermory. And they made it. Nobody had a breakdown, and they went back down to Owen Sound the following Sunday, and nobody had a breakdown. Everybody made it back, and the people up in Tobermory were so excited to see these snowmobilers come up that they had food and the works all there waiting for them. And the next morning when they went to fire up to come back down to Owen Sound, a fellow from the Wyerton Echo drove all the way up in snow to take a picture of these snowmobile. And the picture's on the dash of the cruiser over there. And yeah, and Dad won a race with that machine too, back in 1970, the Meaford Rally. So, and we brought 5 of them here today. So we're just happy to be here. I can't say enough. Doug McElwain and Joe gave me a call last Christmas. Do you think we can put an OMC display on? And I said, I'm more than happy to see if I can help out with this. And this is like Christmas for me today. It's been really, really good so far. We've got some retirees that have popped in the booth here, and some other people whose parents worked at Outboard Marine back in the 50s and so on. And we got a picture right up there, color picture that we took just a couple weeks ago, and that's the Tuesday Coffee Club, they call themselves. And they meet at the Evinrude building every Tuesday for coffee. And they can't get over that there's people that would be interested in stuff that they built all those years ago. And that's what it's all about, Phil. We're trying to save a little bit of history and educate some people too if we can. So, yeah.
When it comes to doing a tricky snowmobile restoration, you need Lady Luck on your side. For these vintage enthusiasts, Lady Luck was the actual name of the sled.
I'm trying to think of the year 1999 maybe. Got in touch with one of the collectors in Peterborough who had a couple other race sleds that I had purchased, and then he had found it actually at the mechanic that built it originally at his house in a mud pile at the side of his garage. And then it just snowballed from there. He sent me a couple articles about it, and I just ran with it, and we picked it up. I think it was summer of 2001. We come up here and picked it up, and then started from there. So it's 14 years now. About a 14-hour drive to Peterborough, and we were coming up for a show anyway, so we had a little extra room, so we brought the relic remains back with us, and then started from there. So the next few years was basically trying to find some parts for it, because all we had gotten was a bare rusted tunnel, a couple of odd and end parts with it, and actually the original airfoil seat, which is, as you can see, it looks like an airfoil. Well, we started with basically pictures, and then the more information that we had gathered, and then with the help of some guys that were interested in it, and some other guys that had some of the products that we needed, really made a big difference. And we started to gather up slowly the parts that we needed for it. Transaxle, which was an early Volkswagen. Being an OMC collector, I had a lot of NOS parts, which was skis and springs and stuff like that. I had to scrap another complete sled for the track and suspension. And then fabricate a lot of stuff, the engine mounts, the exhaust pipes. The flywheel was totally fabricated to connect 2 outboard engines to 1 Volkswagen transmission. It was never finished, but it was actually trial run more than once now that I'm learning that we got up here this weekend. It was tried on grass. It was tried at the Peterborough Airport. And the problem they had with it, it had so much power that they couldn't get it to stick. Back in the day, they just used the polyurethane track. There was no traction, so they really had trouble. They were just getting it to handle. And some eyewitnesses say at 85 miles an hour, it would just go crazy and do a complete 180 circle. So I mean, like I say, we're talking about close to 50 years ago, so people's memories might be a little off. But if you look at it, it looks like a flying contraption, really. But I mean, it's a piece of history. We tried to make it so it was a finished sled that OMC didn't get a chance to finish. And after talking with Fred Harrison, who was the original designer, we got his blessing with it. He thought it was great, and every idea we come up with, he said I would have come up with the same thing. So it was quite an amazing experience.
I've seen a lot of snowmobile collections in my day, but today I am in awe. I am at the Top of the Lakes Snowmobile Museum in Michigan, and the collection here, outstanding.
Well, we started out with this museum from a concept of the snowmobile show starting in 1996, I believe. There was a show and ride in Nobbinway, maybe 100 sleds on the street and a ride and a banquet. And then in 2007, it was decided to open up a museum. We did have a museum for a couple of years, a couple blocks off the highway, and that did well enough that we were able to have a nice bank loan and support from communities and contractors to build this building, and we've been here now for 3 years. We have 156 displays, 122 snowmobiles, and 51 of those snowmobiles are 1968 and older. We have over 40 books that are for sale, the regular publications, and now we just have the new Volume 3 History of Snowmobiling. Suits and boots and helmets and ceramics, gas cans, oil cans, memorabilia. We have a huge amount of that, and those are donated to us regularly a couple times a week. We'll have donations from people that bring stuff in. Well over 200 manufacturers or brands throughout the world. And one of the things we're all about the history of snowmobiling per our mission statement, and we're not just racers or antiques or vintage. We have recreational sleds, working sleds, racing sleds, and other unique things. Well, there was one manufacturer that was an industrial sled, I won't say the name of it, and they thought we should get into the recreational sleds, and the company said, no, we're an industrial manufacturer. Well, they went out of business very shortly, but it's the recreational aspect of those 1970s, late 60s, early 70s, that the sport really took off, and everyone had a sled or two sleds and traveled around locally. That's in our mission, to show them all, and Charlie Vallier, our chairman, kind of is key to that in monitoring what we display, how we display. We do swap out very regularly and have different types, and we primarily have all, as you say, the belt type sleds, but we do have some other unique ones. We have an air sled, we have a Model T with skis on it. We've got about 6 that are like the bicycle or motorcycle type sleds. We even got a Larven from Sweden that all it has is a belt, no skis, no steering, you just lean on it.
There are rare vintage sleds, and there are rare sleds that were also owned by celebrities. I was pumped when I spotted the Manta twin track that was once owned by racing legend Mario Andretti.
Virtually every single person that comes in here goes away with a big smile and is in awe of the dynamic number and classifications of the number of things that we have in here.
In part one of Refresh My Ride, we met our winner, Brandon Kapler, and his Yamaha Vector. On this week's episode, our very own Mike Van Meeuwen, along with Kimpex's Jeremy Gerard, will start work on Brandon's sled. Brandon's Vector has a lot of miles on it, and it is in good shape. He is a dedicated sledder and motorcycle rider, so he knows the importance of regular maintenance. But, as Brandon said to us last week, it does need some TLC. Kimpex sent us a stack of boxes, and as we unpacked them, it was impressive as to how much free stuff Brandon and his Vector were getting. From the ground up, Mike and Jeremy started removing old items and adding new ones. Skis and carbides were a great start, along with new ice scratchers and a set of Ruski wheels to keep the skis and the carbides in new condition when crossing roads or pulling into town for fuel. Up top, Brandon was getting a new windshield along with PowerMed handguards and mirrors as well. While Mike and Jeremy worked on mechanical items, I was delegated to an upholstery role as we gave Brandon's ride a new Skins seat cover.
You don't need the hammer?
Yeah, right there.
Hey, Jeremy, it's time for pizza. Get some pizza, Jeremy, and a large coffee for Phil. He's cranky.
His original seat cover was starting to tear, and when they start, it doesn't take long for the damage to spread. To help Brandon out, it was a simple process of removing the old and installing the new for a refreshed look. While I worked on the seat, Mike and Jeremy were also installing a nice piece to Brandon's Vector. A brand new secondary and spring kit was installed. Brandon will notice an improvement with much smoother back shifting when he is on the wrap tour this winter. Under the tunnel, we had a snowmobiler dilemma. As veteran snowmobilers, Mike, Jeremy, and myself looked at Brandon's studs. We had a box of brand new studs and backing plates for Brandon, but upon close inspection, we assessed that his current studs were actually in really good shape. We agreed as experienced sledders that if we were Brandon, we would be extremely happy to accept the stud package and install them later once these studs showed signs of wear and tear. This was a decision that we knew a fellow sledder would appreciate, especially when he would still be receiving the complete set of studs and backing plates.
Anytime, Phil. Hurry up, Ray. We're waiting over here.
Stop yelling at me! I'm doing my best! They're brutal. With the new windshield, skis, carbides, wheel kit, seat, ice scratcher, secondary installed along with many other items, our day was drawing to a close. There was much more for Brandon as well. He would be receiving a jug of high-end oil and a K&N filter. Brandon had just done his oil change, so Kimpex provided him with a fresh kit for the end of the season. There was also a new suit and a helmet from Kimpex waiting for Brandon, but we would hand deliver that at the unveiling following the wrap kit installation. Snowmobiling goes way back to the 50s and 60s, and for people working on snowmobiles, we tend to think, what about parts for a 5 or a 10-year-old sled? But Kimpex, you can get parts for 20 and 30-year-old sleds.
You got it, Phil. We've basically offer a product offering right from the early days of snowmobiling to modern day stuff. And what we got here today is a couple of products that essentially, demonstrate what we can offer for those guys that are fixing up something much older.
And these are brand new products, so you don't have to go hunting through the wrecking yards or looking for stuff online or buying new old stock that may not have been a good part in the first place. These are brand new.
You got it, and in some cases we've improved from the original product. So what we've got, you've got everything from headlights to windshields to recoils, that may not necessarily be a good part available anymore because some of them out there are 40 years old.
So this is a brand new recoil.
It is. It's a Bombardier recoil from early generation 70s type products, and it's, modern, ready to go.
So no more going through the wrecking yard and trying to take out these bolts and getting a part home that the spring may not work or plastic parts are no longer working. This is actually a full brand new for your old sled.
That's right.
Part. And same as electronics, instead of buying a 40-year-old or 30-year-old CDI box, brand new CDI boxes.
We've got shocks and a variety of other pieces, bogey wheels, those type of things that are out there today available to fix up your old sled.
Well, that's really interesting because there's so many people getting into vintage. Anybody who follows vintage snowmobiles in the last few years, it's just exploded with how many people are getting involved. And the big question is, I've got this sled, it's a 1974, it's a 1978, where do I get parts for it? So now there's an option.
Kimpex has been an option for a long time.
Vintage is a big part of the sport today, and Jeremy, you've been there. You've been to the museum in Cochrane. You actually have an involvement with the old sleds.
Yes, I've been fortunate enough to be part of, many different vintage events over time, and it brings a camaraderie and a sense of where the sport began, and really kind of gets your blood flowing in something that's, you don't necessarily feel today on the modern and new snowmobiles. And, with museums like the one up in Cochrane, it definitely brings back that heritage of where snowmobiling began.
And describe what for you when you see an old sled coming down the trail, or you see one on the lake or in the back of a truck on the highway. What do you think when you see somebody restoring an old sled?
Personally, for me, it gives me a lot of excitement. I believe that a snowmobile has a soul, and it needs to continue on and live to remember where we all began.
And it is something to sit there and see an old sled coming towards you, and as it goes past on the lake, the sight, the sound, and of course, the smell.
STV is sponsored by Ultimax Belts, performance proven, performance driven. Snowgoer Canada Magazine, Canada's snowmobiling magazine, and by CKX. Wear your passion.
I hope you enjoyed the nostalgia that vintage snowmobiling always delivers. On next week's show, we get back on the new iron for some more snowmobiling excitement. Remember, you can always follow us on Twitter and Facebook, as well as our web pages for Snowmobiler TV and Snowgoer Canada. And you can always email me directly, phil@snowmobilertv.com. We'll see you next week here on The Snow.